This is your humble narrator and host, Tony Figueroa. Thanks for joining me. I am the author of Wrestler Zero, a masked wrestler who fights weird menaces. Here's issue 1 and issue number 2. And what we're going to look at today is a handout I created for the attendees of my basic drawing workshops. I reside in Las Vegas, and earlier this year I signed a contract with the city to teach art at the various libraries. And I wanted the people who attended to leave with something that they could use to practice and to think about what they were drawing. So I created this little handout, and I'm going to go over it with you. And this video is sort of a semi-sequel to the previous 2 videos, Hitting the Books and Hitting the Books 2, because a lot of the stuff that I am showing here is derived from those books. So let's jump in. I start off my handout with just a couple of ideas about drawing, namely that drawing is the act of seeing and interpretation. I think Bern Hogarth said every figure is a fiction because essentially all art is the artist's opinion about the subject that he or she is drawing or painting or sculpting or filming or whatever. Secondly, there are no secrets, only things we don't know. That just basically means that be wary of anybody who's peddling secrets or shortcuts or magic tricks on how to draw better fast. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It takes time, it takes a lot of effort. You're going to get out of this what you put into it. So obviously the more time you put into this, the harder you work at it, you'll get more results. Train your eyes to see shapes and figures, objects, and images. Everything can be broken down to a basic form. Any machinery, figure, robot, alien, spaceship, vehicle, whatever it may be, can be broken down into basic forms, and we're going to go over that later. Drawings begin with subtraction. Strip away all detail and reduce your drawings to their essence. I personally believe that the initial process of drawing is a subtraction. You're stripping away all the unnecessary detail. You're getting right to the essence of the drawing. Once you clearly establish the essential character of the drawing, you slowly add detail. What that basically means is once you have the gesture down right, you have your proportions, you have your basic forms in place, then you can start adding the details, clothing, shading, lighting, rendering, whatever the case may be. But you have to begin with just the essence. So a very stripped down version of the drawing. So moving on to page 2. You and I will produce many bad drawings. These are lessons, not failures. Even the best of artists struggle with things. They produce drawings that are not up to their standards. Maybe to you and me, it would be a fantastic drawing, but to them, not so great. So the point is that even with a quote-unquote bad drawing, there are still lessons to be learned there. And sometimes a drawing that you do now is the answer to a different question you haven't asked yet. So don't beat yourself up over something that doesn't come out right. Celebrate it when it does come out right. But if it doesn't come out right, then this is an indication that you have work to do in a specific area. Be an eternal student. That's the mindset you have to have. You really can't be a fan of your own work if you want to make progress. You can certainly enjoy it when things go well, and you can feel good about it, and that's fine. But at the same time, it's a constant, ongoing education. There's always something to be learned. There's always something to be relearned. There's always something to be, just practiced over and over again. It's like a musician, a jazz musician or a classical musician. These are people who have a mastery of the instrument, yet they're constantly practicing, they're constantly learning. Sometimes they seek out instruction from other players. They're always listening. You have to be an eternal student. Discipline will get you through times of low motivation better than motivation will serve you if you have no discipline. Over the years, I've met a lot of people who I consider to be far more talented than I am, whose work was far ahead of what I was doing at the time. I don't think any of them are still doing anything today because it's not enough to have talent or aptitude, if you prefer. but you have to have the discipline that goes with it. If you don't have that, regardless of what your chosen field is, you don't really have much. What inspires you? Who inspires you, and why? When you look at a piece of art, whether it's comic art, illustration, sculpture, painting, whatever your medium is, if you feel a reaction to that piece of work, if it grabs you, analyze why that is. Is it the structure? Is it the theme? Is it the stylistic approach? Is it the use of color? But really study why you like a piece of art, why you like the work of a particular artist, why you find it more interesting or compelling than, let's say, another piece of work, which may be technically good, but just doesn't really push your buttons the way a specific artist does. So just, really get down and think about that, because when you are able to codify what it is about art that appeals to you, you can import those qualities into your work. So, well, here are the basic forms: the sphere, the cube, the cone, pyramid, cylinder, wedge, the ellipse, the barrel, and the egg. Now, these shapes are not carved in stone. They can be manipulated, stretched, compressed, but it all starts here. And all of these shapes will appear in virtually every drawing that you do, whether it's of a person or a robot or a spaceship, a vehicle, furniture, whatever the case. This is it right here. So, moving on from that. This is the gesture, the essence of the drawing. It's free-flowing with no detail. As you can see right here, I'm just indicating movement. This arm is swinging this way. It's bringing the torso up from here. This part of the body is moving down into this right here. I misspelled rhythms, but you get the idea. There's a series of rhythms and counter rhythms. So if this is moving this way, you're going to have another movement going down this way. If this arm is moving this way, you notice that the chest is moving down here, just driving straight into that right there. So, and then this is boiling the figure down to its essence. You're able to clearly recognize what these figures are doing. There's no detail. There's not even any really basic shapes here. It's just strictly line. This is a gestural approach. You're just quickly capturing an idea. I use this approach a lot when I watch a movie that has action, or maybe someone's just walking or standing or sitting in a specific way. I tend to do a lot of this if I'm watching football. I'll have my sketch pad and I'll just quickly capture a gesture. If I'm watching pro wrestling, same thing. Just as a method for very quickly boiling a finger down to its essence. This is something that I practice, and I suggest that you do too, and even the best of artists still practice it. And here's some more examples of the essence with a center line of action. Essentially, the center line is an imaginary line that runs down the center of the body. You could also say it's the spine, but like in the case of this drawing, the spine would be curving in somewhat of an opposite direction of this. Here you can see it illustrated here and here, but the body is basically bilateral, meaning it's the same on both sides, but most artists use a center line just to indicate the thrust of the figure. So again, these were taken from different films, I think some sporting events, stuff like that. So again, this is stuff to constantly practice. In one of my videos about hitting the books, I was talking about the book by Jack Ham. And one of the techniques in that book is TUM, T-U-M, and it's basically an understructure, and the U is for the collarbone and spine. The T is for the collarbone here, and then the M is for the hips and pelvis, and it sort of makes this T with the center line, a U, and then an M. This is just a shorthand, but it gets you thinking in terms of structure, in terms of how the body is a series of shapes that work together. So, and here's some examples of some elaborating on what I did earlier with the line of action down the middle, and here's the TUM concept at work. And the U in tum is obviously upside down. But the clavicles here are sitting at the top, then your rib cage is in here, going down to the pelvis, from which the legs radiate outward. This little area right here is known as the great trochanter. And this is a view from the back, all very simplified. This is the stuff you need to be practicing. Before you get to all the razzle dazzle, you have to have the fundamentals down. And it doesn't get much more fundamental than this. And then this is the mannequin, and there's two spellings. I've seen it spelled both ways. Every successful artist uses a version of this. Reduce your favorite artist figures, and I misspelled figures, to this. The arms can offer a wide variety of movement. I did 3 arms here. This is a little bit like the Bern Hogarth's dynamic figure drawing, because this joint is capable of movement in a variety of areas. The same thing with the leg. And as you can see now here, I incorporated the center line, and I've reduced everything down to basic shapes. So we have cylinders for the arms and legs, cylinders for the upper arm as well as the lower arm, and that egg shape for the head, which is sitting on top of the cylindrical nature of the neck. And then you have the rib cage. So again, this is something that virtually every artist I've ever seen, successful artist I've ever seen, does this or a variation of this. And I adopted this from a book called The Figure by Walt Reed, and the famous artist book that I mentioned in one of my previous videos on, called Hitting the Books. I adopted that from there. So, and it's come in awfully handy. It really helped my work a lot. So, and just to give you an example, I have this little sketch right here. As you can see, the arms are cylinders. Again, the shape of the rib cage, the ovoid or egg shape of the head on top of the cylindrical mass of the neck. So you can see there where these concepts are being used. And to a degree, there's also the M shape in the tum concept. That would be the T, and we'd have the upside down U going into the M. So that's just a little quick sketch on copy paper. So moving right along. And again, this is the same concept I just showed you with the figure being reduced into basic shapes. But now we're also adding the concept of the rhythmic flowing line. When I approach a gesture, what I'm looking for are the longest lines of action. Like, for instance, right here, this is a very nice long line of action. Gives arcs all the way down to the leg. Keep your lines flowing, not choppy. Look for the rhythmic, again, I think I misspelled rhythmic, lines that flow through and connect. These lines should be more curved than straight. As you can see, same thing here. Okay, this is stuff to practice. You have to train yourself to reduce the figures you see in art or in real life from photos or from a video that you've paused for a particularly cool pose, which I do a lot. You have to train your eye at all times to be seeing everything in terms of basic forms and shapes. And then the detail comes last. And this is more practice with the basic forms and the TUM or tum concept. As you can see here, I've got a nice line going down here, arcing down here, then this other line coming down here. There's a flow between these forms. When you draw the body, just don't think of it in isolated parts. Oh, this is the head, this is the neck, the torso. It all works together in concert to create something beautiful. So always keep that in mind, that what you're trying to do is just establish this nice flow right here. And do you notice her flowing lines? Coming down really nicely there, if I do say so myself. Again, this coming here. Train your eye to see these relationships. Because what is drawing? Well, drawing is just lines on paper that creates the illusion of a 3D object moving in and out of space. So train your mind to see everything in these terms. And this one, can you see my U and M shapes? And obviously, You can see the T shape right there, the clavicles, and then you have the upside down U shape of the rib cage flowing nicely into the M shape of the pelvis. Okay, nothing fancy here, just a touch of detail just to give it some volume, I guess, but this is how I practice. So then what I also did was I included some additional material that the attendees can study at their leisure at home. And this is a nice shot of a skeleton here. I think this was done by Vesalius. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's a skeleton, but you can see the shapes. Again, we have the T, the clavicles here. And then you have that center line of action. And then you have the U. And then it flows down into this M shape, right? So do you have to know the names of all these muscles and bones, excuse me? No, but you'll learn them over time and enough study. Now, moving in a little bit closer here, where I'm placing my pencil right here, this is where your pectoral would be right there. And you see how the muscle is going to sit on top of there, because nothing is flat on your body. Everything has a roundness and a volume to it. And then this is our friend, the skeleton, also by Vesalius, seen from behind. And you can see just how the spine runs down. Again, we have the same shape. This is an M shape, right? M. And then you have this upside down U. And then the T. Now the distance, this used to drive me crazy until I figured this out, but the distance between the head, how do you know what's the correct distance between the bottom of the rib cage and the top of the pelvis? Well, you take the measurement of a head and it fits right in there. So in other words, the distance from here to here, okay, the distance from here to here is approximately a head. I just usually have it as a head, because it used to drive me crazy when I would draw this and say, well, how do I know what the distance between the bottom of the rib cage and the very top of the pelvis is? And I know there's an anatomical actual name for that, but it escapes me at the moment. And it's a head. From here to here, it's about a head length. So just something to look at. Obviously, for proportion's sake, this is a little bit exaggerated, but generally speaking, I depict this with one head length, maybe slightly longer, another head length, and then these are two heads, and then two heads here. Okay, so the head is used as a unit of measurement. And I included some photo ref, so it'll work nicely with the skeleton here, right? So you can study and appreciate what's under the skin envelope. Okay. And again, you can get your gestures out of here. And then here's a nice one here. Really some nice flowing lines here. If you study this, just that center line going down there. And I would use that as the longest line in this piece of drawing. And, he's putting his weight there. And then I'd have another line coming here and just bringing that. There's some real beautiful shapes in there. Once you train your eye with enough practice, you'll begin to see this very clearly. And lastly, I think I end with some suggested books, and these are, for the most part, books that I covered in Hitting the Books and Hitting the Books 2. The Figure by Walt Reed, How to Draw the Human Figure by the famous artist School Cortina, Figure Drawing for All It's Worth by Andrew Loomis, Drawing the Head and Figure by Jack Ham. One book here I didn't talk about in the previous two videos is The Spirit of the Pose by Carl Ganas. He's extremely good with gestural stuff, so he has a lot of videos on YouTube. His books can be a tad pricey, so I would just suggest copying along what he's doing on YouTube. The Human Figure in Motion by Edward Muybridge is a very old book, but it's just a series of shots of people in action, running, walking, jumping. Pretty good, and it's available pretty cheap. I did mention this other one, The Human Figure in Action and Repose. I left out the word figure. We talked about that in one of the videos, Hitting the Book videos. Worth every penny. And at last, keep practicing, studying, and learning. Try every tool. Stay on your purpose. In good times and bad, find good teachers who will show you the fundamentals. When I say try every tool, what I mean is just that. Try the crow quill, the dip pen, try the brush pen, try the brush, the magic marker. Try everything until you find the tools that you can feel most comfortable with, that you can use to express what you're trying to express. Obviously, the studying and the learning never stops. Stay on your purpose. The world is full of distractions. You have social media, you have video games. You know, you have to choose what you're going to give your time to. If you're serious about learning how to draw, if you're serious about improving your art and being the best that you can be, you have to make a choice. You either devote your time to other things or you devote as much time as you can to your art. In good times and bad. Hey, you know, we all have them, but you have to stay focused. When things are bad, stay focused. When things are going well, really stay focused. And lastly, I would say find good teachers who show you the fundamentals. I think that's crucial. I'm a self-taught artist, and I know I probably would have saved myself a lot of years and a lot of frustration if I had a teacher that I could have studied with and learned from and gotten proper guidance from. You can find artists on social media. A lot of them fairly generous with their time. You know, some of them may want some money, and of course they are professionals. Their time is worth something. Or you can approach them at conventions, at shows. But the point is, always seek out people who know more than you do. Because if you're in a group of people and you're all at the same level, there's not much you can teach each other. So always strive to find people who know more than you do. So, and that's it for now. Thank you so much for joining me on this little video here. And keep drawing, keep practicing. These are some, when I watch a movie, sometimes I like to kind of draw what I'm seeing in the scenes. And this is just some stuff I do for fun, really, more than anything else. And this is one I did recently based on a Dracula film with Christopher Lee, but this doesn't look anything like Christopher Lee, and that's okay. And I just do this to study the compositions and just to maybe lighting on the face, but I don't want to just sit there passively without my drawing materials on hand. You know, you always want to be trying to progress and improve and get better. And here's one I did just, again, watching The Return of Count Yorga. I had some fun with this one. And that's all it is. Is it meant to be perfect? No. Am I going to publish this in a comic? No. But am I practicing? Am I studying? Yes. And that's the most important part. I'm always trying to learn. It's easy to copy other artists, and I do study other artists, and I will do copies in my sketchbook for the purpose of learning. But I think going to life, whether it's on screen or real life or using photo reference, gives you a solid foundation of how things actually look. And once you get good with that, then you can start to stylize and you can start to take it in a different direction, because it's not where you take it from, it's where you take it to. So on that note, I'm going to leave you guys for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you watch this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and I also post on X under The Tony Figueroa. I am under The Tony Figueroa on Instagram as well as Facebook. You know, spend some time, check out what I have, and, you know, I'll see you on the next one. You guys take the best care, and in case I don't have occasion to say this before the holiday, I hope everyone who's listening to this has a fantastic Thanksgiving. Thank God for the elastic waistband. Take care.